Hey, good morning, everyone. This is the Fireside Chat with Emma Gerstein. Emma is the second flute of the Chicago Symphony, and she's one of our younger members of the orchestra. And Emma is actually a Chicago native, which is really, really cool. I don't know if people know how hard it is to go growing up in a city. You travel all over the world, you study, and then you come back, and then you get a job in your hometown. I just think that's so cool. So I can't wait to talk to Emma about her journey from Chicago back to Chicago. So let's see, here's Emma, and we're gonna go live with Emma. All right. We've got a few people watching today. We've got Thomas Robertello. We have Valentin. Hi, guys. Let's see, we're waiting for Emma to connect. Here we go. Hey, Emma, how are you?
Hey, David. Good. How are you?
Hey, fantastic. Thank you for joining us this morning, and looking forward to this fireside chat.
Yeah, me too. I'm excited. I've been watching them, and it's been really fun to get to know my colleagues better. I mean, there's so much I didn't know about people that I kind of know, so it's really fun.
Well, I have to say, you started this all. I mean, it was
Well,
kind of you were the impetus to actually get these the fireside chats started with the live warm up on the CSO musicians.
yeah, that was super successful. Thank you for doing that early on in this pandemic quarantine period.
Yeah.
David did a live Instagram warm up on our CSO musicians page, which was really awesome.
Oh, it
Um,
was so much fun. That was the first time I'd ever done a Instagram live. I didn't know
yeah,
how it worked. I was like, this is going to be fun. I was like really nervous. I remember my heart was racing for like the first 5 minutes.
yeah,
And
I
then
bet. This
afterwards,
is this is my first time doing one myself, although I've told other people how to do it. So I knew how to do it. I've given like step-by-step instructions, but
I saw it. Well, you were perfect. You joined right away. You were in the, the feed. I
that's
remember
great.
like, I taught Jay how to do one, and that was that like, and then teaching Jay and Dale, that was like really fun for me to kind of be like, all right, how would I explain this technology to someone who's never done this before? And
Right. That's pretty
so,
amazing.
yeah, yeah, it was when Dale connected, we were like, yes, like the small victories.
I know. What will we be doing in 30, 40 years,
Oh my gosh, maybe
technologically?
they'll still be doing TikTok dances.
Oh my God. Oh, amazing.
So we have a few people to say hi to real quick.
Sure.
And so let's start at the top. So we've got Mike Boss 191. We have Quinn Brass. Mike Boss is watching from Romania.
Wow.
We have Four Flutes, One Eye. We have
Good
Clayton
name.
Bobaton. Clayton Bobaton is watching. Gabby Vargas is watching. Valentin
Gabby.
Eschman. Yeah. Jen Gunn is watching,
Oh, hi,
and
Jen.
Jen said hi, so I'm gonna wave to Jen real quick. Let's see how this works. We can just virtually wave to her. Matthew Royce.
Oh, hey, Matthew.
Yeah, so
Hey.
Matt and I used to go swimming together in Dallas.
Oh,
We
wow.
would we would do these like we'd get our lungs really pumped up by swimming, and then we'd go to rehearsal like the next day or like later that day, and we'd just be like, oh, this humongous sound from like like holding your breath and pushing it
Wow, that
all.
must feel really good. I am not the greatest swimmer, so I've never had that experience, but
I was a terrible swimmer actually. Like I could doggy paddle, and that was about it. Like growing
mhm.
up, I never took a swimming lesson. And for me, like I watched a master class with Charlie Vernon, and he was like talking about how swimming really affected his trombone playing. And I was like, well, I should probably get into this. And so like I would try to like like do the crawl as best I could, and I didn't want to get my face under the water, so I remember like like you just like you're doing this sort of thing, and then inevitably water gets in your ears, like like,
Yeah, or like up your nose or something.
yeah. And I would like swim in these
Yeah.
like Texas lakes that are like muddy, you can barely see your hand in front of your face, like that's how like clouded they are.
Hmm.
And then I remember like I when I was doing my third Chicago Symphony audition, I remember thinking back, I was like, well, if Charlie swims, I should probably swim. So I bought some goggles and I bought some earplugs, and like I was like, all right, we'll just get in the pool and see. And I remember just being like 5 strokes across the pool and just be like just feeling like I was drowning, and then it got better and
Yeah.
better, but really helps
Yeah,
my lungs.
there's an Olympic an Olympic-sized swimming pool near Hyde Park, the neighborhood I grew up in. It's in Washington Park, actually. It's like adjacent to Hyde Park. And I used to go there with my dad when I was little, and I couldn't even get across the pool once, you know, without having to stop. It was pretty.
That's another. I'm moving to Hyde Park like tomorrow. That's like.
It's an amazing. This park is amazing. Washington Park. It was designed by Olmsted, the same guy who did Central Park in New York.
Okay.
He also, actually, a really good book recommendation, especially for new Chicagoans, is Devil in the White City. Have you read that yet?
No.
It's all about the World's Fair of, could be 1892 or 3. I can't remember.
Yes.
And all of the architecture that was going on in Chicago at that time. If you've been to the Museum of Science and Industry down in Hyde Park, that's like one of the only buildings that's left over from that. But the whole midway down there was covered in, you know, structures that looked like that. And there was this big World's Fair, but then there was also this like serial killer who was targeting people who were coming to Chicago to work at the fair. And it's all true. So it's really, it's a very good read. It like reads like fiction, but it's nonfiction. And there's a lot of history. So yeah.
That's crazy. Wow. I
Cool
mean,
tip.
yeah, I'm getting to know Chicago. Like, there's so many neighborhoods that I love your mug, by the way. Love that. The cat mug.
Oh.
Yeah, that's really cute. Oh.
Yes.
I'm
still having my coffee, so.
You don't have a cat?
I don't. I'm a cat lady by heart, but not in reality at this time. My parents have actually 6 cats. Which is a bit intense, but I grew up with animals. I grew up with dogs and cats, and I've had pets most of my life, but in this apartment I'm not allowed to have a dog, and we haven't gotten a cat, so we'll see. Maybe when I move we'll get some animals.
Man, that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I love my cat. It was like one of the things that got me through Germany, you know, adopting this cat. Like I was, you know, I'm an animal person. And I went.
You got the cat in Germany.
Yeah, I got her at the animal shelter, and I thought like for sure I'd be able to find a cat on the street, just like, you know, a normal, like, you know, a stray cat, and you feed it, and that's how you get a cat, right? You like feed a stray cat, they keep coming back, and then, like, you know, it's like, yeah, it's like horn players. You keep feeding us, we don't go away.
I know that firsthand.
I think you fed a horn player.
I do. I continue to feed a horn player.
Your
I'm
boyfriend,
married to a horn player.
Yeah, okay, your husband's a horn player. Yeah. That's so funny. So yeah, like I just thought that's how I would get a cat, and there are no stray animals in Berlin. I was like, this is the craziest thing. I haven't seen a stray dog or cat or anything. And
wow.
You know, coming from Texas, where like the stray animals are kind of, I don't want to say a problem, but like, you know, someone has a dog and, you know, it you know, for some reason they don't want it anymore. They take it to a neighborhood and they drop it off, and it's really sad. But
that is really sad. Yeah.
Yeah, but you know, so there's a lot of animal rescues in Texas, and also that's how you get your animal. Like I got
absolutely.
a couple dogs that way.
I'm definitely very firm about that for myself. We wanted to get a dog right now, actually, because we're at home all the time, you know, and it would be a great time to do it. But my landlord isn't really budging on the no pets rule, so I think it'll have to happen at another time, unfortunately. But
well, yeah, it's just frustrating, you know, with like I remember like I adopted this dog, and I was like, look, isn't he cute? And then my landlord was like, yeah, it's really cute, but you gotta get rid of it or you're gonna move. And I was like, oh, okay.
Oh no.
That was like 10 years ago in Fort Worth. Oh. So yeah, anyways, I went to this animal shelter, and like I wanted to get a kitten, and they're like, no, I'm sorry, you could only have like 2 kittens, or if you have a cat at home, you can adopt a kitten because a cat must raise another cat. And I was like, what? It was like, that was their logic. They were like, yeah, a cat would not be socialized unless it had another cat. So I was like, okay, I guess I can't get a kitten. So they're like, you can't even see the kitten. So they took me past the kitten, like, you know, habitat, like the 2 buildings of kitten habitat. And then I went to the other parts of this animal shelter, and it had like, you know, cats that you could adopt. And they're like, would your cat be able to go outdoors? And I was like, yeah, I think it could go, you know, in and out when I let it outside. And they're like, yeah, but it couldn't go out by itself. And I was like, yeah, well, no, I mean, I'd have to open the door for it. And they're like, nope, sorry, you can only have an indoor cat. And I was like, what? So like all these cats in this like habitat I couldn't see, and so like there were like 3 indoor cats to choose from. They're like, this is Klaus. He's really good with other cats and kids, and he'll eat your socks. And or
Klaus.
like or like this is Otto. He's really good with other cats, but he'll eat your kid's face. So it'd always be like something really good about this cat, and then they'd always like share honestly like the bad thing about this cat.
You gotta love Germans, it's just like very to the point.
Yeah, it's like there's they're very direct, and that's like
Yeah.
you always know where you stand with a German person because they're honest at the expense of your feelings sometimes, but they're at least honest. They say like
Yes.
And so if they like you, they really like you, which is really good.
That's true. That's true. Just like a cat.
Yeah, exactly.
Not that Germans and cats are the same, but cats, you have to earn their affection.
You do,
right?
Yeah, no, it's like it's not a given. If they like, you're like, hey, come here, cat. They're like, no, I don't think so, not today. No, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm really busy. I might just come over and say hello. No, I'm sorry, not now.
Well, I hope your cat walks by at some point while we're chatting.
Yeah, she's basking in the sunlight right now. It's really a nice sunny day here in Chicago. Which
it's really nice. Yeah.
Yeah, we've needed one of these for a while.
I know. I'm hoping to. Well, I'll get out at some point today and go for a walk. Get some sun myself.
How are you handling like the quarantine, like the stay at home and like all?
I think the first couple of weeks it was like a shock to all of us, right? I mean, and I think it took some time for me to transition into that, emotionally and in terms of just like having any motivation to practice and stuff. Cause I was like, I'm used to having a concert or something to work towards. I don't think I've ever gone this long without a concert since maybe since high school or something, and I'm not used to just like working just to work, or like working I mean practicing.
Yeah.
Right. And this year for us has been really intense already. We've had 2 tours. It's been like go, 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 go. And I was just like, I felt like I kind of needed a couple of weeks just to like chill. And now I've kind of gotten into a groove, like a little bit of a routine. I'm playing every day a little bit. I'm teaching. Awesome. I'm cooking a lot, just like everybody else. Yeah. Making sourdough bread. Not to be a cliche.
Oh, wow.
But
you'll have to share your recipe.
Yeah, I'd love to share my experience. It's been it hasn't just been uphill with my sourdough. It's been a bit up and down, some really bad loaves, but now I'm pretty consistent. So
really, I need to know. You have to share your secret later, but back to the practicing. Like, how did you kind of set up a routine for yourself?
So it was like a couple of weeks ago. I was just kind of putting whatever I wanted on the stand and just playing it, and then some days, and then I would take a few days off, and then I would come back and I wouldn't feel very good, and then I'd be like, 2 steps forward, 3 steps back kind of thing. And then I just decided to really buckle down and like get intense about my fundamentals. And so I've been doing there's a flute exercise book called the 28-Day Warm-Up Book by Paul Edmund Davies, and I've done all of the exercises in it. It's broken down into like 4 categories. It's sonority, fingers, articulation, and intervals. And there are 7 exercises of each, and they're in all keys. All
sonority. It's sonority, fingers, flexibility.
Articulation.
Articulation and intervals.
And intervals. Yeah. So I decided, and if Jen Gunn is watching this, she's done the whole 28-day system. You just pair one of each exercise. You do 1 articulation exercise, 1 sonority exercise, 1 interval, and 1 finger exercise. And it rotates every day for 28 days. So wow. I just decided I was going to do that, because at least if I did that every day, then I'd be in shape, because some of the exercises are quite long. It can take you like over an hour just to get through all of that. And so then usually by the time I'm done with that, I'm like in the zone and I want to play more. So then I'm playing more music. So I'm finding it pretty useful. And I think now that I'm in this groove of playing every day, I think I'll be okay. Like I'll keep it up for the time being.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah.
Man, yeah, I feel like
Jen's clapping.
Yeah, I know. She's like she's huge about the warm up and the 28-day.
Yeah, she loves that book too. It's really good.
Could you say it one more time? 28-day fundamentals.
The 28-day warm up book.
Okay.
And it's Paul Edmund Davies.
I wonder if we could transfer that for Horn. I wonder if we could make a transcription for Horn.
Alex has asked me about that because he's like, I really, it seems like really good to just like be so methodical about all of these things. Some of the finger stuff might be, well, I guess you could just do it slower and like down a couple octaves,
Yeah, exactly.
It goes very high.
It would transfer. I think so. I mean, the hardest thing for me about reading flute music is just the ledger lines. I'm like, wait, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, that's a G. All right, okay. That's the hardest thing is just counting like ledger lines.
That's me counting ledger lines below the staff. Because I never play anything below a low B, like the B below middle C. So I can't read like anything below that without struggling. So.
Can you read bass clef?
I mean, yes, but not fluently.
Right.
Like I took piano just in college and stuff.
Okay.
So I'm not like.
You're like, yes, yeah. I can read bass clef, Dave. Yes. Like.
Well, not well. Like if you put a gun to my head right now and told me to read something, I probably could. But
I don't think it'd ever be that drastic with bass clef. It's like.
I certainly hope my life doesn't get to that point.
The bass mafia, they come and get you. They're wearing masks.
Oh God.
They're like, can you read? Yeah. No, so it's kind of fun, to like, do some duets with other instruments. And what I realized is for me, like, the things that I take for granted, like, yeah, I can just read bass clef because I play horn, but, instruments that usually play the treble line, like flute, oboe, they don't clarinet, they don't usually get a chance to read. So I'm like, hey, let's switch parts. No, let's switch parts. Okay, I'll take second.
Right. Yeah.
So.
I know. I think it's just a matter of like exercising that part of your brain. And like while you're a student, or if you did it enough when you were younger, like if you played piano from, a young age and it's just like inherent, like riding a bike, then you could probably still do it now. I actually kind of regret that I didn't have piano lessons as a kid. I wish I had, but it wasn't really, my parents aren't musicians, so I don't think they really were thinking in that way. It was just like, I was into flute, so I did that, and that was that,
That's pretty awesome. So like your parents, do they work at the University of Chicago?
My mom went to the University of Chicago, like later, like in her 30s, she went to school. And my dad's family grew up, or they're all from the south side of Chicago. They're from South Shore.
Oh, wow.
And then his family had a grocery store chain. I mean, it was only 2 or 3 stores on the south side. And then my dad, he was a teacher, and then he took over the family business, which was a grocery store in Hyde Park, called Mr. G's. People from Hyde Park know it. I mean, it closed in the late 90s, so it's been gone for a while. But and then my mom, it was a staple
of the community. It was like a staple.
It definitely was.
Wow.
He had a machine in his store, I remember, where you could rent. It was like a vending machine, but for VHS tapes.
No way. It was like the first Dropbox.
Yeah. I was like, this was pretty ahead of your time, And he carried like, ethnic foods of the time. Like he had like tahini, which was like really hard to find apparently in most places, and like health foods. And then my mom actually, so they met at the store because my mom shopped there. And then my mom ended up opening a vegetarian cafe across the street from the grocery store called Emma G's Cafe.
Emma G. Wow.
So yeah.
So you had your own restaurant from like the time that you were.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're like, yeah, of course there's Emma G's. So are you a vegetarian?
I think it would have done better now than it did then, with like the way that people are with health food and stuff. But yeah, it was a different time in the 90s.
Yeah, it's really ahead of the time, actually, because I mean, I think like first Whole Foods I remember was like 2004, maybe 2003.
Yeah. This was like easily 10 years before that. So I feel like my parents were like urban pioneers or something,
That's so cool.
Yeah.
So, I mean, how was it like growing up in Chicago? Like, what was the flute scene? Oh, 4 Flutes, 1 Eye says, I went to.
Wow. That's really cool.
Awesome.
I see my friend Ellie is here too. Hi, Ellie.
Hey, Ellie. And then Jenny Benny says,
Oh,
hi.
hey. Hey, Jenny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I guess I was going to ask you, what was it like growing up in Chicago? Like, what was like the flute scene like? What was the classical music? Obviously, there's the Chicago Symphony,
Right.
but what was it like for a young player?
Well, so I feel like I should tell the story of how I started because I feel like it's
Yes.
kind of
Yeah,
a cute
absolutely.
story. I started, so I was, and it's funny, I heard Stefan's interview with you the other day or whatever, Fireside Chat.
Yeah.
And he said that he started flute because he was good at recorder. And I didn't know that, but that was the same for me.
Okay.
So I was like, a lot of kids, elementary school kids learn recorder. And I was so into it. I like, everyone else was still playing hot cross buns, but I was teaching myself like every song I knew, like Christmas songs, whatever, just like, you know. And I would stand outside of my school after school and play my recorder just on the street, like a weirdo. Um, and while I waited for my parents to pick me up, and my soon-to-be flute teacher's husband was picking up one of her students at my school and heard me. And he must have spoken to me or something and asked me, who my parents were. He knew my dad because my
Oh,
dad had this grocery store.
yeah.
And so they got in touch with my parents. They're like, your daughter should take flute lessons. She's so into recorder. And I ended up having a flute lesson. I was so reluctant because I really just wanted to play recorder. Thankfully, after about 2 lessons, I was like sold on flute, was really into it. And it turns out, so this teacher, she wasn't just any teacher. She was like a really well-known flute teacher in the city. She also taught, one of her most notable other former students is Damari McGill, who you
No
probably know.
way. No
Yeah.
way.
So, and she's had other really successful students also. Rachel Blumenthal, she subs in with CSO and Lyric, and she lives in Chicago also. So, yeah, so I ended up studying with her. I was so lucky. It was just like fate, It's like
Yeah. No,
the
I
right place,
like
the right time.
when these coincidences happen in our life. I mean, I look back and I'm like, man, I couldn't have made this situation happen any better. Like I couldn't have orchestrated. If I would have said, what's the design to become a professional flute player, and who would I study with? Like I wouldn't, All right, so I'm gonna send them out in the corner and play recorder every day after school, and hopefully they'll run into a flute teacher. Like,
Right? Right?
mind blowing. Yeah.
I know, it's crazy.
Yeah.
So, my parents, like I said, they're not musicians, but they are music lovers. Like they were always playing music at home. My mom was more into classical and my dad was more into jazz, but they both were kind of into whatever.
Yeah.
And they just played a lot of music at home, and they were always really supportive of whatever I wanted to do. So they helped me kind of navigate, based on what my flute teacher, her name is Susan Leviton, what she was kind of recommending. And when I was 10, she was like, you should audition for Interlochen, to go to the camp.
Yeah.
I was like, all right, I don't know what that is. And I ended up going, and I went for 6 summers to Interlochen. And that was like so awesome. I loved it. I never went to the academy, but I just loved the camp so much. I made a lot of really good friends. And I think that's where I also decided that I wanted to become a professional musician. So
Yeah.
it was pretty formative for me.
Well,
Yeah.
Interlaken has a huge part in my life as well because I think that was the first concert I ever saw. Was
Wow.
So my family has a vacation place in northern Michigan, and we bought this piece of property and built a little cabin. And so it's about 15 minutes from Interlaken, and so my parents would go to Interlaken just to see concerts, and that was my first exposure to classical music. Like
That's so cool.
did, yeah. So no, it's like I mean, yeah, absolutely. Interlochen, I think, has played a huge part in a lot of people's lives, but that's
Definitely.
unbelievable.
Definitely.
So, I mean, obviously, it's a beautiful setting with the lake there, and then there's the concert hall on the lake, and then it's the first time I saw people that were young that were really serious about music. That were like, hey, like I'm really practicing, just like I was really practicing, and it's like this is awesome. I'm like with other people that are like really into this and love it as much as I do.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's something about, for me, a combination of getting to Interlaken at a young age and also being in a big city that was like pretty humbling for like a young classical musician. Because I think Um, a lot of people, if they grow up in smaller towns and aren't exposed to like more players, kind of are always like the big fish growing
Yeah.
up. And I mean, I was and I wasn't. Like there were times when I would kind of get better and have like win a little competition or, you know, be first chair for a year in the orchestra or whatever. But then there was always somebody else too,
Yeah.
you know, and I never really got comfortable like in any role. And I think that was actually really good for me because I wasn't kind of just feeling like, oh, I'm so great and, you know, I can do anything. You know, it was like, oh, there are other people out there who are really good and they're going to work hard and they could be better than me, and so I should work hard too, you know.
Wow. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think when you probably went to New York for studies, I bet it probably wasn't as big of a shock as if you've been from, you know, kind of like a small town and then been the big fish in the big pond. And then you go to this big sea and you're just another fish, right?
Totally, yeah, I definitely felt that way. And that's, I think I wanted to go to New York for that reason.
Mhm.
I obviously auditioned at a bunch of colleges. My teacher Susan, she well, she was pretty realistic as well. She was like told me I had to audition at 12 or 13 schools because I might not get in anywhere. And then she also had this thing that she said to all of her students, I think, which I thought was actually pretty useful, which was that, you know, if you can imagine yourself doing anything else other than music, you should do that. Just because it's a really competitive field, it's really hard life, and
Yeah.
you know, I'm lucky, you're lucky, we're like in the
Yeah.
Chicago Symphony.
We're unbelievably lucky.
um, but right, like, you know, it, who knows what could have happened if all of the stars hadn't aligned in all the ways that they did along the way, you know, like we are talking
Yeah.
about with me standing on the corner with my recorder. So I appreciated her honesty in that way.
Yeah.
You know, she was just like, you know, if you want to do something else, do that. And I didn't. I couldn't see myself doing anything else. So I wanted to go to a bigger city, to like a bigger place, to like just like really immerse myself in a different scene um, at that age. And I think I don't regret that. I had a good time in New York. It was really fun.
I mean, I guess, what was it like studying there and kind of like being around all these, like, I mean, there's a high level at the student level, but then also there's so many professionals who are freelancing, and then there are also so many professionals who are at the absolute top level, like, you know, New York Philharmonic and Metropolitan Opera. Like, did you rub elbows with any of the really great flute players?
Well, my teacher was principal of the New York Phil, Robert Langevin. He also was
Oh,
Jen's teacher.
I love Robert. Yeah,
Yeah,
he's fantastic. Yeah.
he's amazing.
Yes, he really is.
So and he would get me into, I mean, he gave students tickets to concerts almost every week.
Wow.
So that was awesome. I remember my first New York Phil concert. They were playing Leonore Overture. I don't remember what else was on the program. I just remember that because, and it was probably a really crappy comp ticket because I was like right in front of the orchestra, you know. But I thought it was so exciting because I was like 18, 19 years old, and I'd seen the CSO a lot, so it's not like
Yeah.
I had never seen an orchestra. But I was like, wow, that's my teacher playing right now. Oh my god, like that's that sound that he had in the orchestra, and I was just like completely blown away, and I felt really inspired to like to work so that I could, you know, hopefully be good someday. um but in terms of like other professionals, yeah, we had like at MSM we had a lot of people coming through New York who were performing, who would do master
Mhm.
classes. And we had some access to the other teachers at MSM, although the studios were pretty separate. I
Mhm.
did end up working with all of the other flute teachers as well, which was really, you know, beneficial because they all had really different careers, you know.
What lessons did you take out of the conservatory? What lessons did you really come away with when you were at the MSM?
Oof. I think, well, seeing Robert work the way that he did every
He's one
day,
of the hardest workers I've ever seen. I mean, he's always practicing.
always, and he has actually, while we've been quarantined, I have this like folder of photocopies of like technical studies that he gives all of his students. And I scanned them and I put them into my like Google Drive so that I can like easily access them or like send them to a student if they want to see them. But he does them too. It's not like,
Yes.
he's not just like, oh, go do this thing, go do these long tones. Like, here I am resting on my laurels. Like, he's like working his butt off every day.
Every day, yeah.
And he teaches a lot. Like, he has, you know, several students at MSM and several at Juilliard, and then he's got the orchestra. I mean, he's a busy man. So I mean, I feel like he was the biggest takeaway for me from my experience at MSM. I mean, he was the best part by far.
Yeah, it was that modeling education. Of like, hey, if you want what I have, do what I do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think my last year there, he started doing, or maybe even my junior year, he mostly taught graduate students at MSM in the orchestral performance program. So I think I was the only undergrad. And he did these like group style lessons. They were like they do in the Paris Conservatory, like masterclass lessons. Yeah. So we all, you know, like a Thursday afternoon, we would be in this dark windowless room for like 4 or 5 hours, you know, the 5 of us or the 4 of us. And we each had to get up and play for each other. And, you know, it was definitely intimidating at first because they were like master's students. They were really strong players. But I also learned a lot from the way that he worked with them.
Yeah.
And the things that he focused on with them. I find him like, he was a very neutral teacher. He didn't really like favor some people over others, and he just wanted to help everybody get better. And
you said something that's really interesting.
Amanda Blakey is on now, and she was at MSM with me in my studio.
No kidding. Hey, Amanda.
Hey, Amanda.
So I guess the thing that really stuck out to me was that you were in these group settings, like these group lessons, and you were able to learn from what the other students did well, and you were also to learn from maybe areas that they could, you know, focus on, you know, improving. So it's like the group lessons, like if you have an opportunity as a student to sit in on a teacher's lesson, I mean, it's very beneficial. I've done that at Bill Vermeulen's studio. I've done that with Dale Clevenger's studio. And I think that's one of a huge gifts a teacher can make available is to share their teaching. And it's also a gift a student can give to the other students.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think the sooner we can all, and I'm not saying I did this as a student, I was definitely very insecure when I was younger. But I think the sooner you can like drop your ego, just leave it at the door and just like be there to learn and absorb, the better you're going to get. And like, there was another girl in my studio there who I remember like, Robert sometimes makes you change your setup on the flute slightly. And she was a master's student and she was kind of struggling with the setup. And I had been studying with him since I was young and like kind of had it under wraps. And she asked me, she's like, how do you like play like low register stuff, like so loud? And so we would like talk about how we practiced. And I would ask her for help in some situations too, like, you know, things that I was struggling with. And I think the more you can foster those kinds of relationships in your studio, the better everybody's going to be, you know?
Wow. Yeah, it's like that training group mentality, like, you know, a cycling group. And I always go back to like, you know, like for lack of a better knowledge of cycling, the U.S. Postal Service team, right? You've got Lance Armstrong, you've got, you know, Floyd, you've got like all these guys, and they're pushing each other, they're training each other. And it's that mentality, hey, I'm going to push myself. And then, okay, well, if you're going to push yourself, then let me push myself. And let's like help each other to win that, you know, that yellow jersey. And, you know, it's just for me, that's something that we took. I had a friend who was a cyclist. He still is a cyclist. He's in the San Francisco Symphony, timpanist, Ed Stefan.
Okay.
And Ed taught, you know, like, all right, this training mentality can be applied to music as well. So we formed this group of players to listen to each other play excerpts. And we called it the Cake Club, right? And like we would eat cake, you know, because his wife was a baker, but it also stood for collective associates, quick with a K, Exodus, right? Because we all wanted to like get someplace, you know, fast. We wanted to get to like that next big job, and you know, 3 of the 4 of us got into the Dallas Symphony from that training group. But we would play excerpts for each other. And so I got to learn how to listen to timpani. I got to learn how to listen to bass. I got to learn how to listen to viola. And, you know, it's just really, it's that same mentality that you had with your studio, except we created it in our job with professionals.
That's so awesome.
Yeah. So Could you talk about your well, so you went to Indiana University and then New World, and I'd love to just hear about those experiences and how they helped you to become a professional.
Yeah. So I met the flute professor at IU when I was in high school. I went to Brevard Music Center. It's another summer camp. So that's where I met Tom Robertello, and
Oh,
he's been a
Tom.
huge part of my life. Just, I don't know. He's like a mentor. He's a friend now too. He's been my teacher. And I still like have played for him, in the past couple of years just to like get some feedback because it's hard to have people that you can play for that you really trust
Yeah,
when
I
you get
agree.
old.
Yeah,
Like, okay. Am I doing everything
you're
okay?
far from
Um,
old. You're like, yeah. Those should not be using that sentence, but yeah, I
well,
understand
you know
when
what I
you're.
mean.
Yeah, when you're professional, it's like you have a kind of a select few people that you're like, okay, I trust their ears, I trust their ears, okay, and like I know that they're not gonna come down on me for playing for them.
Totally. Right.
Yeah.
And I feel like we have that relationship, which is really great. And I had always wanted to study with him when I was graduating from high school. He was taking a sabbatical because he played with the National Symphony for a couple of years.
You play with the Dallas,
Um,
I think.
and he played with Dallas. Yeah. He's played like with every orchestra. It's like pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Um, I later got to play with him in the CSO, but like before I had my job and obviously before Stefan was hired, he was playing guest principal. So that was really awesome. But yeah, at IU, it was a hard transition for me, like socially, because it was really, really different from New York, and different from MSM. Like it was
Yeah.
just a very different school.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
different city too. Like, I mean, it's like one's like hustling
Yeah.
metropolis, and the other's like this academic hub in the middle of kind of like farmland.
Yes. Um, the the atmosphere at the music school was so like, I don't know, it just felt like a different world to me. And the flute studio was enormous. It was probably like total like 35 or 40 people. So
Wow. Wow.
that was weird. And it was a university, so it was like a little bit more like academic than a conservatory. But I would say now, looking back on it, um, doing it the way that I did it, conservatory and then university, it's not what most people do, but I think it worked well for me because when I was like 18 and I moved to New York City, I was so excited to be there and I wanted to take in all of the offerings of New York, go hear concerts, just like go out and eat and drink and hang out with my friends. And once I got to IU, I was like super focused, like laser vision. Like
Yeah.
I need to really get to work, and there was nothing to distract me there. There's nothing to do there, you
Yeah.
know.
Exactly.
So it was actually good. I practiced like pretty inefficiently while I was there. I practiced a lot, but I ended up getting tendonitis towards
Oh
the
no.
end,
Oh no.
which I mean it's not a big deal now, but at the
Yeah.
time I was like just pretty upset. It was hard to
How,
play.
how did you get over that injury? I mean, because like obviously when you have an injury, there's like the mental component, like of fear, like oh my gosh, is this ever going to get better? And then of course there's the physical like side. You're like, hey, is this going to heal? Like,
Right. I know. I think once it was funny because I had this pain in my wrist and my left wrist, and like every time I moved my thumb, my wrist would like pop, like something in my. And I finally went to the doctor on campus, and they were like, "Oh, this is tendonitis." And once I had a name for it, I felt like a little bit better. Like, okay, this isn't just something that's in my imagination. Like, this is real. And then I just kind of took it easy. I did play like my orchestra stuff throughout the semester, but I didn't play much in my lessons. I think we did like more like listening to stuff, talking, playing a little bit of like easy, maybe tone exercises.
mm,
So I did take it easy for pretty much a whole semester.
wow.
Um, and I did a lot of physical therapy, and it didn't, I mean, I think at this university, they didn't have people maybe that were specific to like musician injuries.
Yeah.
And I took like oral steroids
Yeah.
once to try to get rid of it. That didn't work. I ended up having to get an injection of
Of course.
cortisone.
Wow.
But I just had it once, and I still have like flare-ups in my left arm. Like I've had like tennis elbow off and on probably since I started with CSO, but it's not severe. Like I can,
Mm,
I just have to kind of keep my eye on it and like stretch and kind of put some heat on it occasionally, get massages,
Yeah.
etc. So,
Well, I mean, are you doing any like exercises to kind of help strengthen around that area, or are you doing some posture stuff to kind of figure out a way to, body awareness stuff? Because for me, like I was getting this huge pain in my back, like right under my scapula, like right back
yeah,
here, and that was just from like lifting my horn up all day. And like I started doing Pilates, and I realized the pain's gone.
yeah.
And then all of a sudden, like I'd stop doing Pilates, and I'd be like, the pain's back. I was like, I got to do Pilates as a self-maintenance thing to kind of keep that pain down in my back.
I also do Pilates, so
Hey!
yeah, hey Pilates.
That's awesome.
I know. I really miss because I go someplace here in the city that a lot of CSO musicians go here. They have it's a studio. They do like acupuncture and massage and physical therapy, chiropractic, and they have Pilates, like private reformer classes or whatever. And I really miss going there a lot, like for all of the body stuff that I usually do. I do all of that basically there, and but I miss my Pilates instructor, so I can't wait until we can go back out in the world.
John Ye is doing virtual Pilates sessions. He does 3 of them a week.
Wow.
Now, yeah. So
yeah, John Ye goes to the same place that I do. So
I think he's been doing them online. Like they'll just come in and give him a Pilates lesson on his phone.
That's awesome. I should look into doing that myself.
Yeah, I know. John's like my hero. He's like golly, that guy he's so positive and so happy.
So positive. But so are you. Oh my God. You're just like, you're always smiling. You never look like gruff or tired or anything.
You know, it's funny, like I feel so grateful, right? And I think you do too. Like, obviously like we realize what we have. And I think when you are grateful, you're just like, man, it's just that shift of perception. It's like, yeah, life could be so much worse. So, why not smile and really enjoy this and appreciate what I have? And there are some days where I might not get enough sleep and I might be a little like, oh, shucks, but, like for me, just kind of getting that gift of perception where like I get to do this, I get to play music and I love it so much that, it shows. It really does.
Yeah, so, definitely.
Do you want to say hi to the cat real quick?
Yeah, I do. Kitty.
So she's on this little stool. I set the stool next to me. So this is she's got a perpetually grumpy cat face.
She does, but she's so pretty.
But she's German, so German cats have to be a little bit grumpy. And you have to see, this is her peanut butter toe. That's her peanut butter toe. That's her.
She's like, put me down.
I know, yeah. She's like, this is not dignified. No. So.
Jen is happy.
Yeah, Jen's awesome.
Cat emoji.
I love cats. So, after school, you went to New World. Yeah, like, and how did you transfer to New World?
So there was a little bit of a, couple of years in between. So after I finished IU, my teacher, Tom Robertello, he at the time owned an art gallery in Chicago.
Yes. Yeah.
And I worked there for about a year after I finished school. It was a great job out of school. It was perfect because I don't know if many of you gallery hop, but on a given weekday, there are not many people like visiting galleries. It's like maybe on the weekends, it's a little busier if there's an opening, but it's pretty quiet. So and he told me like, just practice there. It's fine. So I would just I had like administrative stuff to do, but it didn't take the whole 6 hours that I was there usually per day. So I would practice and then do what I needed to do. And then I was in a beautiful space with art,
Yeah.
So it wasn't the worst place to be. And I did that for about a year until I felt like I could kind of support myself freelancing. And I won a little regional orchestra job in Lexington, Kentucky, which was a bit of a haul. It was like 6-hour drive, but I would stay there for the whole week. I had a friend who was a student at University of Kentucky and she let me stay with her.
Yeah.
So I did that and I did various gigs for a year and it was pretty exhausting just, kind of living out of my car. Yeah. I remember just like keeping snacks in my car at all times.
Yeah. You lived out of your car.
Often you can't like stop and like have a meal somewhere sometimes between gigs or like teaching and this and that.
Yeah.
So when I got into New World, it was like my first year at New World, I was so grateful. You know, we're just talking about being grateful, but
Yeah.
I didn't have anything else to worry about. Like I didn't have to worry about money because they paid a stipend and they paid for, or they provided housing, and
Yeah.
like you just had to buy food and then pay for flights
Wow.
um to auditions, obviously.
So
But yeah, it was just like,
what an amazing like opportunity to like, have this, your life is basically covered, right? Like all your living expenses except for food. And then like you don't have to worry about that stuff, and then you have training on top of it, and then you can, like really focus on your craft.
yeah, it was funny too. That first year that I was there, there were also there were basically no flute auditions.
Mm.
There was one at the beginning of the season, but I couldn't take it because it was like my first MTT concert, and they never let first years out of those for good reason.
Yeah.
And that was it. So I didn't actually have to, I mean, I worked on excerpts and I worked on my playing, but I didn't have like audition after audition. So I could kind of just, be in the moment, learn how to play an orchestra. I came into contact with a lot of my now colleagues while I was a New World Fellow. John Ye and Steve Williamson were both down there from time to time, and I had lessons with them.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was really great. It was, I mean, it's hard also living with all of the people that you work with. Can you imagine if we all in CSO lived in the same apartment complex?
We do for about 3 weeks a year, right?
Yeah.
On tour.
On
And
tour.
that's like
It's like that.
at the end of like the third week, you're like, okay, I just want to go to the breakfast and not have to talk to anybody.
Right?
Hi.
Like, or like if you want to go to the gym or something, you're like, I don't want to be
Yeah.
seen right now.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
yeah, it was great. It was a really great experience. I'm really glad I got to do it. And like we had coaches coming from all over the world to work with us. And one great thing too is that you could play for people that don't play your instrument. Like I said, I had lessons with Steve and John, and like, with oboists and bassoonists, and I'm not sure if
What
I ever had any brass lessons.
we'll
But
teach you how to we'll teach you how to play loud, loud and sustained.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
But no, I have a question. What did you learn from playing for someone that's not your instrument? Like what lessons did that teach you?
One for sure is there are things that flute players kind of obsess over, and there are things that flute players let slide, you know? And I think non-flutists have a different take on both of them. One that I can think of is like notes cracking. Like
Mm.
we have these sometimes on flute, it's not as audible as like
A horn.
horn,
Yeah, tell me about it.
obviously.
Oh, yeah, what's
But
that like? Oh yeah, I know.
but it's still, for like a clarinetist or an oboist or a bassoonist, if they hear that, they're like, what is that? Why isn't that note speaking? It's speaking late, or it's not, there's no tone on that like staccato note. And you're like, oh, that's because I cracked. But a flutist might be like, oh, well, that's an E, and it's hard to get that note out, so whatever. But I think there are things like that that other people notice that that flutists might not, and then other just like musical ideas. I mean, I feel like I learned a lot from Danny Matsukawa
Yeah,
from
Danny.
Philly.
Love Danny.
He did a whole class on like playing Mozart concertos, and I still like think about it all the time when I'm teaching Mozart or when I'm playing it myself, just like about playing in that style. And it was like not specific to any instrument. It was just like, this is like ideas about playing classical music.
Man, wow, I would love to like pick your brain sometime about the Mozart style, and just like some of the things he taught you, because that's like, obviously I think Mozart and Beethoven are some of the harder composers for me to play and to play well. And it's
Me
so
too.
simple.
Yeah.
Right? It's like,
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, it's, when I was a kid, I was like, oh, it's just Mozart. And now I'm just like, oh, Mozart has so many layers. It's so transparent. It's like,
I know. There's
yeah.
this phase in high school where like everybody hates Mozart, like teenagers, like like I like Mahler and Rachmaninoff and stuff. And then like you get older, you're like, well, maybe not everyone had that experience. I just remember that at camp at Brevard.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's
And
really
you're like, wow, this stuff is so good. Like, this is the best. So,
yeah. No, that's awesome that you say that. So, while you're at New Worlds, did you start taking auditions?
yes, I took a lot of auditions at New World. I said my first year where there were hardly any, But after that, there were a lot. And I was there for, it's a 3-year fellowship, and I was there for like 2.5 years.
Mm.
So the way that I ended up starting to sub with the CSO was kind of a circuitous route on the way to an audition. Since I'm from Chicago, obviously, I was taking an audition in Montreal, and I had like the whole week off from New World because of when the audition was. And so I went home first because it was my grandma's 90th birthday.
Oh yeah.
And I played for Jen Gunn, like just like a mock, whatever. It was a lesson. It was, just to get feedback for the audition I was about to take.
Yeah.
And it was at a time when the flute section was in flux. Like, I think Mathieu had already left, and Louise, my predecessor, I don't know if she had retired at this point, but she was maybe taking a sabbatical. And so there weren't, there were half down people, And so I played for Jen, and I was like, I got a lot out of the lesson, to take with me to Montreal. And the next day, I got a call from John Deverman, our orchestra manager, asking me to come sub.
Wow.
And I was like, whoa, I'm not expecting that. And so that from then on, I became kind of a somewhat regular substitute. And I got to then go on an Asia tour and a domestic tour. And, it was like one of the best experiences ever. I just couldn't believe I was there. I was like,
I mean, what was it like for you to play the first note or like to hear that first, 5 minutes with the Chicago Symphony and be on stage, best seat in the house, right? Like right in the middle of the orchestra. And then like to hear this orchestra that you've grown up with and this sound like all around you.
Well, I'll tell you, the first program I played was Mahler 7 with High Tink.
Oh,
so
man.
It was like, it was not like E.T. or something. It was like, not that there's anything wrong with that. It was just like, it was really full on. It was like, this is like what the Chicago Symphony does. Yeah. And it was with a conductor that they all love and revere. And when he came out in the first rehearsal, everybody started like cheering and like clapping and stomping. And I asked Jen afterwards, I was like, do you guys always do that for conductors? And she just laughed. She was like, no. But they just loved High Tink. I think I was playing, fifth flute or something. I was like way on the end, but I had just never heard a sound like that, like from the whole orchestra. And I really remember the way that the principal winds played. It really had an impact on me. It was like they went all the way with like the expression and with any musical ideas they were doing. It wasn't just like, because I feel like at New World, everyone was there were a lot of good players, but everyone was just kind of a bit meek sometimes about the way they played, lacking a little bit of confidence, lacking just going for it. And I remember like Eugene Izotov, like his playing really stuck out to me in that program. Like, whoa, this like doesn't even sound like an oboe sometimes, Yeah.
Well, I think when you're a student, I'll keep this on myself. When I was a student, I didn't, number one, have the confidence, but I also didn't know what I wanted to say, and I didn't know how to say it. So it's like I had these skills on my instrument, which I probably still like. They're about the same as today, I would say, But like I just didn't know what I wanted to say, and I hadn't thought it through enough to say And I honestly, I feel like that's the difference between a professional and a student, is that they are really making these dramatic gestures, and they have the confidence, and they also have the experience to know what they want to say.
Yes, very well put. Yeah, I think that's exactly the experience I had in that moment, like hearing that difference, of commitment to like a musical idea. So yeah, that was great. My parents were obviously very excited.
I bet. I can't imagine, like, your parents probably were at the concert, just like, we saw her with, Chicago Youth Symphony. We saw her, growing up as starting her very first flute lesson from a, recorder. I mean, I just can't imagine how proud your parents must be.
Yeah, they are very proud. They have 2 subscription packages to the CSO. So they come almost every Thursday to concerts.
Oh, that's awesome.
They sit behind the orchestra half the time, and then in the lower balcony the other half. And
well, for half the time, can I apologize? I'll be like, I'm really sorry. It's really loud behind my bell, but
they love it. they love sitting back there. I'm like, you can't even hear the flutes when you're sitting back there.
That's
They
awesome.
love like the vibration of the seats, and they love
Yeah.
seeing the conductor's face.
Yeah,
So
that's awesome. Oh
yeah.
man, so cool. So you started subbing with Chicago Symphony, and then you're taking some auditions, and then you got to New Zealand, the
Yeah.
other side of the world. Like,
Yeah. That was pretty crazy. So I got a message from a friend of mine who had been at New World. Her name is Ingrid Hagen. She's a bassoonist who plays in Auckland. Um, and she was like, we're doing a search for a principal flute. They had like a national audition round, hadn't hired anyone, so they were gonna just do like a short contract, like a 3 or 4 month contract, just to get somebody there. And she asked if I was interested, and I was like, sure. So I I put together, and the audition was just like, you had to just send any recordings of yourself. It didn't have to be anything specific. So I didn't have to like record something for that. I just used recordings I had, from the orchestra at New World, and maybe from like a summer festival or whatever.
so you're saying
And I sent that, and then
they did auditions, like a whole worldwide search based on, like, hey, send us your best thing. Like, it's not like send us this list. It's like send us a recording of yourself that represents yourself.
right. Well,
Huh.
this was just for like the contract. It wasn't for the permanent position.
Okay.
So they had a couple of rounds, I think, of auditions already, and like hadn't found anyone. So I ended up applying, and then I got it. So it was like beginning of 2016, I think. I did the CSO Asia tour in January, and then I came back to Miami, and I played like one children's concert, and then I moved to New Zealand. So I was like very jet lagged.
I bet. Yeah, because you went
quite a while.
from Asia back to Chicago, and then you went, basically back to the Asian time zone, but
Yeah.
you went Southern Hemisphere. Yeah, wow.
Yeah. But it was so wonderful there. I mean, obviously, if anyone's been to New Zealand, they know, but it's one of the most beautiful countries I've ever seen.
I've seen Lord of the Rings. Does that count?
It's just like that.
Okay.
Yeah, and the people are so like warm and welcoming. There are a lot of Australians, a lot of Canadians, Americans, a lot of international people in the orchestra.
Oh wow.
Because New Zealand's a pretty small country population wise, and I think maybe not much of an emphasis on music for kids. I mean, there is music education, but maybe not to the extent that they have in other countries. And so I think a lot of people from other places end up coming there to join the orchestra, and then never leaving because it's so beautiful and it's such a great lifestyle.
Yeah.
I mean, you can see now the way that New Zealand has dealt with COVID compared to the US. I'm like, I wish I was still there, but yeah, it was wonderful. I loved it. It was a really chill job too. We had concerts on Thursday nights usually, and then we'd have a 3-day weekend.
No, really? Oh man.
Yeah, it was great.
That's like unheard of.
I know.
Yeah.
And what's the expression, like live to work or work to live? I feel like the Kiwis like work so that they can like have a good life.
Yeah. Wow.
Rather than the other way around, I feel like in the US where everything is about working, your job and like.
Yeah. No, I mean it's like a very different attitude in the rest of the world than we have. We're like, all right, what am I doing today? All right, let's do a lot of it. Let's do it really fast and let's get it done. And like early bird gets the worm. That's
right. It's like it kind of forced me to slow down a bit. So then they had an audition while I was there, and I was like, I'm here. All I have to do is take the bus to this audition, so I may as well do it. And I did, and then I got the job, and I was obviously really happy because I really liked everyone there and I wanted to stay. But yeah, it kind of forced me to like look at my life differently. Like I for the first time tried to think about like maybe I could have a hobby,
You're like, wait, food's not a hobby? That's wow.
Yeah, like I felt taking auditions was my hobby,
Yeah,
to be honest.
Like, too. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's like all of my spare time. So I like took a jewelry making class, and I, tried to get outside more, and it was it was just nice. It was like, wow, I don't have to like be tunnel visioned anymore on flute.
Yeah.
I can like open it up a bit and see the world.
Hey,
And
Emma,
mhm.
so we're gonna lose you in like 15
Oh,
seconds. Can we
okay.
reconnect
Yes.
and continue this conversation? Because I still want to hear about how you transferred from like New Zealand back to the Chicago Symphony.
Yeah.
I want to hear
Sure.
that
I'll see
story.
you in a
So
second.
yeah, see ya. Oh, hey, sorry. I'm just having a sip of coffee here. I guess we're live. And John Ye is on, and Emma is requested to be on the live chat. We're just going to finish up our morning with Emma and get to hear how she came back from New Zealand. So,
Hi.
hey, great to see you again. Sorry
You
we
too.
got cut off. It's
That's all
just
right.
that silly hour, limit on the Instagram lives.
Wow, an hour really flies by.
It's so easy to talk to you. I mean, like
Yeah.
I feel like this could be like a regular one show a week or show a month thing. Like we
I'd have to come up with more stories in my
well,
life.
I honestly like I don't think it's not a problem. Like with the jobs that we have in the city that we live in, it's like they just happen, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's true.
Yeah. So eventually down the road, I'd love to have like a podcast where we just talk about, hey, like this is what we're doing this week. This is like what the rehearsal was like. This is like one of my favorite moments in the symphony this week. We could talk for like 20 minutes about like stuff with the Chicago Symphony.
That would be awesome. I think people would like to hear like more behind the scenes stuff about what we do. I get questions all the time from friends who aren't musicians and like not really understanding what rehearsals are like or what we do backstage or whatever, just kind of demystifying all of it could be kind
Emma, we should work together. We should
All right.
collaborate. Let's
do
I'll
it.
have your people talk to my people. We'll talk.
All right.
All right.
Oh,
Awesome.
my sister's here and she says that's a great idea.
No, so yeah, that's like one of my
Hi,
things I really want to do is have like a, it'd be called backstage, with the CSO or, we can't use the name backstage in Chicago, something like that. But
We
if
can't
we,
use backstage.
no, we can't use CSO.
Oh, right. I was like, what's wrong with that?
Exactly. No. I don't think we're allowed to use the CSO name, but we could just say backstage in Chicago and
Yeah.
just talk to like players. We bring on like guests and just have like stories about the week and what we're excited about coming up this week and yeah, I think
That's great.
yeah, the time just flies by like together. So yeah, down the road that can be one of our projects.
Let's do it.
I invested in some podcasting equipment during this quarantine, so I'm gonna eventually post quarantine transfer the Fireside chats to a podcast setting, and then the other project could be the backstage in Chicago.
Yeah. Hey.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll
With
talk
all the
more.
time we have when we're working, right?
Oh my gosh, no! It feels like I wake up, go to the hall, and then I'm at the hall, and then I come home and go to bed. Like
I know.
there's a couple meals in between, and then I'm back home. It's like,
Yep.
wow, I haven't seen my cat all day.
Oh.
And I remember like she'd get home, she'd be like, "Where have you been all day? What are you doing?" Like and like,
Is she mad at you because you're home all the time now, or is she happy?
Oh, she talks to me, and like it's funny. Like certain times, she really wants like my attention. She wants to show me something, and she's like, "Mark," and like she doesn't have like an actual meow. Like cats develop their meow for their person, right? So every meow is like different depending on the cat, depending on the owner, and depending on the mood. So yeah, like she has like kind of like a flat face because she's part Persian, and so when she like meows, it's kind of like a meh, like. And if she wanted to go outside when we were in Germany, she'd go meow, meow, and that was like that's how she would talk to the.
That's so cute.
and eventually it'd be like, okay, I shouldn't have encouraged this because now this is a thing.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd be like, yeah, just that's.
What a sweetie. That's cute.
So you were in New Zealand and you got to like live this amazing life. You got to have like the job. You got to play music, but it wasn't like full encompassing, like all encompassing like orchestral life.
Right. It was and it was a lot less busy than New World. I mean, at New World, we were playing at least 2 concerts a week. And then we also had all the coachings with the guest, you know, teachers who would come. And those were usually on Mondays. So we rarely had days off at New World. You know, it was like 7 days a week of, you know, pretty busy schedule. And then I went to having a lot more time. And then Louise Dixon retired. And so I was like, all right, well, this audition's going to be happening. And I had never auditioned for anything before that I really, really, really wanted that badly. Of course, you always want a job when you audition for a job.
Yeah.
And you always want to be employed. But it was the first time I had taken an audition while I already had a job for a job that I really, really wanted. And it was like on the other side of the world. So it was going to be a huge commitment to get there. And a huge, you know, financial burden too. Like flying to the US from New Zealand is like at least $1,000. So it's like,
at least, I mean, like 1,500, 2,000. I mean,
yeah.
And how long?
I mean, luckily, they have a nonstop flight now from Chicago to Auckland, which I'm supposed to be going there this month to visit. Obviously I'm not, but that flight is like 15 or 16 hours. And then, but if you have to stop over in LA or San Francisco, you can just bet on a day, you know, pretty much door to door, about 24 hours. You have to get to San Francisco or LA. And then from there, it's like 12 hours.
Is Auckland the big city in New Zealand, or is Wellington?
Auckland's bigger, but Wellington is the capital.
Okay.
So, so yeah, I played, it was a tough balance. I mean, you've done this probably many times, but like when you're preparing for an audition and you're working, you can't just play millions of hours a day if you have a concert. So I had to kind of, it was like a careful balance of like how much I was practicing on concert days, because I still wanted to sound good in my job. And I didn't get tenure there until right before I left for the audition. So I wasn't like totally comfortable, you know?
Yeah. And that's the thing. Yeah. You don't want to jeopardize your, you know, this job that you have. And obviously that's your first priority. You're like,
right.
These concerts sound really good because that's what's paying the bills. And that's what's, you know, they're employing me.
Exactly.
So, yeah. You have to keep that level for the job.
That was difficult, but I spent a lot of time. I mean, as soon as the list came out, I was like organizing my little audition chart and like trying to get really, again, very methodical. I'm a Virgo, and I feel like I'm very Virgo in some ways, very organized about things like this. So I just got on it. I got to work, got organized in the way that I felt like would be best. And I was able to also fly. I got the last prelim day and I flew in, and I had a few days to recover from jet lag, maybe 3 or 4 days, which
that's super important. Yeah.
So, I mean, for anyone who's watching, who's been through a CSO prelim round, you know, it's like, it is cutthroat. It's ruthless.
It's the hardest thing I've ever done to get out of that prelim round.
Yep.
Like literally the hardest thing.
Yep. I mean, you know, because they don't do a semifinal round, so it's just prelims and finals. So if they don't hear something that they're like really interested in, you know, they just cut you off, and they cut people off after like, you know, 2 minutes or, you know, hardly playing at all. And that, it can be devastating. But I played the prelim, and I felt like I played well, but you never know. And when Anne, our assistant personnel manager, came in and like announced my number, I was like, oh my God, yes. I was so happy.
Yeah.
And then there was a huge gap between the prelim and the finals. It was like November to February. It was like,
wow. Yeah, that's like 4 months almost.
And because that's the summer in New Zealand, so the orchestra doesn't play very much then, and it's Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
I just stayed in the US that whole time.
Mm-hmm.
I missed like some Pops concerts, some Christmas concerts, but I didn't miss much. And I was able to just stay in the US and then do the audition in February and then fly straight back to New Zealand.
Perfect.
And I felt like, I definitely felt a lot of pressure in that final because I knew everybody and I played with the orchestra a lot. I played with the orchestra in between the audition rounds as well. I'm
And
still
that's, I mean,
subbing a
that's
lot of
something that,
times.
like, you know, if you don't know, if you've played with an orchestra, you know the people, you really want the job, that added pressure that you've put on yourself of, number one, like wanting something, number two, like, you know, what are they going to think about me? You know, especially it's like it's more if you know somebody like on the other side of the committee, like what are they going to think about my playing? It can be a lot to weigh on. So like, how did you kind of manage some of that pressure that you put on yourself?
Oh, I did a session with, do you know Noah Kageyama, the Bulletproof musician guy?
No, I don't.
You know that blog? So he's like a protege of Don Green,
Okay.
and he came to New World a few times to work with us on like mental preparation and resilience, and you know all this performance anxiety, all these things. So I did a session with him leading up to it because I felt like playing wise, I was like I knew what to do, like I knew
Yeah.
how to prepare,
Yeah.
but it was more like mentally, how was I going to handle, you know, doing all of this. So that was really helpful because I think I was able to just kind of look in myself and figure out the way that I work, and the way that what makes me tick in an audition, and what I needed, you know, before the audition day and on the audition day to feel my best. And obviously I've never been more nervous for anything in my life, but I just did it. And then, yeah, when John Deverman told me that I won, I like cried. John Ye
Oh,
was there. He remembers. Like I
oh,
was just like,
oh.
because it was a lot of things. There was a lot of emotion wrapped up in it. But like, everyone knows, I'm from Chicago. This is the first orchestra I heard live. My family's here, and as much as I loved living in New Zealand, it was so amazing to know that I could come back home and play in this amazing orchestra. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Man, I mean, that's like, I mean, I think that's kind of how I felt too. I know it's not my home town, but I consider this like my favorite orchestra, and I also consider like Chicago home because I'm from Michigan, and we used to come down here on our holidays, and this is like a special place for us. Like, you know, my dad wouldn't take that much time off of work. He was a small business owner, and when he would come down to Chicago with us, we'd have like 3 days together with, and this is like the place where we'd have our family Christmas vacation.
oh wow,
Yeah, so it's you know, it's kind of like a special place for me, and then the lake too that, you know, like we used to
I
fish
know,
on the other side.
yeah,
So,
I
yeah.
bet,
So I mean, that's like that homecoming feeling just must have been just overwhelming, but also just like, wow, what a relief, you know?
yeah. It was great too. I was able to start at the beginning of the next season because I wanted to kind of, I didn't want to leave New Zealand in a hurry because I knew it takes a long time for them to hire there because it's, you know, people don't really know about it as much. It's so
Mm.
far away, and I just wanted a little bit more time there. So I was able to start in September. So I had a little more time in Auckland, which was great because I felt like really relaxed about my time there. And then I was obviously very stressed when I started. But and I will say too, I had / have a massive case of imposter syndrome. I don't know if you've
Oh man, yeah,
felt
yeah,
that,
yeah.
but
That's like that's huge. It's like, I mean, I obviously I've been doing this for a little bit, but I mean, I remember my first few jobs. I was like, are you sure? Like, I'm the guy for this? Like, really? Like, I'm not good enough. This couldn't be me. And then like you get out there and you do it week after week, and you look back and you're like, well, I guess they hired me. And I guess I've been doing the job, so I guess I'm the guy, but like I don't feel like
right,
the guy, you know. And then after a while, you're like, you know, I, I I start to like realize what humility is. And
right,
humility for me is like realizing the things that I don't do well, right? And admitting that, but then also recognizing the things I do well and then acknowledging that as well. Like, hey, like I can do this really well. And the more I prepare, the more I don't have this fake confidence or this fake imposter syndrome, right? I'm like, well, listen, I know I've prepared really hard. I know this music really well, and I know I can do this after repetition. So it's not like, you know, for my ego. I'm not doing this to say like I'm great or I'm not great. It's like I'm doing this because I just have done the work. You know, that's it.
that's a good point. I feel like
Yeah.
definitely, even in auditions, I feel like I can feel more confident if I know that I've done all of the work that I could do to prepare. And it's the same with orchestra. Like if I feel like I did it to the best of my ability, prepared really well, and I know what I'm doing, then I can feel more confident because I can rest assured that like I did everything that I was supposed to do and that I needed to do. But it was definitely like a crushing pressure for me for like the first year. I was like so anxious in some of the concerts. I felt like feel physical feelings that I've never felt before, like in a bad way, just like, like heart racing, sweaty palms, like just like crazy, because I felt like everyone was doing like playing so well in the concerts, and like I was just worried that I was going to do something to mess it up,
Oh yeah, I've been there. Yeah.
Like, how can I be here sitting next to these people who's, I just idolized as a kid, and eventually it's kind of dissipated over the years. I definitely feel like more confident in my ability to do my job well.
Yeah.
It comes with experience, but also just just getting used to it. But yeah, man, that first year was definitely
Wow.
very
Thanks for
stressful.
sharing. Thanks for sharing that, because I think that's something that we don't really talk about, and it's like something that is real, that like we all have those kind of feelings of like, I don't measure up, I'm not quite good enough. And it could be at the level of your school, it could be at the level of your camp, it could be, and obviously, like everyone else is seeing you and they're like, man, she's in this job, she sounds amazing, she's doing this. All your colleagues are probably thinking that. They're like, man, this young flute player is in the orchestra and she's just nailing it week after week. She's so prepared, she's so nice, and she's like so consistent. But like the feelings that we feel on the inside are really, it seems real at the moment, but I've always said we act our way into right thinking, right? We don't think our way into right acting. So that's kind of like you're saying.
Right.
So it's like we have to do
Yeah.
the right action, and then the feeling will follow. And I
Will
think
follow. That's really good.
yeah, it's what you've just.
I see four flutes one eye asked me, what was it like going from playing principal to second?
Mm.
Which is something that you mentioned earlier that maybe we would talk about. Yeah, okay, so I always wanted to play in a great orchestra more than I wanted to play any specific job. Like that was kind of something that was like my dream.
Yeah.
More than being, XYZ. So I wasn't a great piccolo player, so that wasn't necessarily going to be my route. But in terms of any other flute job, I was open to whatever. And I think there are more similarities than people often realize between the jobs. I mean, they're obviously very different, but I think listening is probably the most important aspect of playing in the orchestra, and it's just the way that you react to that is different in the chairs. Like playing second, it's more about obviously supporting the principal, and sometimes like really getting out of the way and hiding, but sometimes really being strong and really supporting them, and just knowing kind of do both of those things. But yeah, playing principal, obviously you're also listening and reacting, but you're leading a little bit more. So I don't know, it is different, but I enjoy both, honestly. I like them both a lot. So yeah. I don't know if that answers.
I mean, yeah, I mean, it really does. Is like, obviously the listening, we're listening to like the whole orchestra, but hey, knowing where I'm supportive and knowing where a melody changes. And I think that's really what you said. So I guess for me, I need to wrap this up within the next like 5 minutes, because I'm doing another thing for the Canadian Brass, like
Oh my God, you're a busy man.
The musician's mindset, which is my Friday. I just feel like I could talk to you for like hours. It's just so easy. But
likewise, this is very nice.
what I guess before we leave, could you give a little bit of advice to the students out there and just talk a little bit about, what would you go back and say to yourself, maybe as a student in high school, student in college, and then a pre-professional and then a young professional?
Yeah, I think something that I touched on earlier is something that I've thought a lot about now that I'm a professional, which is just like being open to learning from your colleagues rather than just feeling competitive with them. So the people in your studio or the people wherever. Like I really felt like I finally got there when I was at New World, with my section mates. We played for each other a lot and we learned from each other a lot. And I just wish I hadn't waited so long to really be there emotionally, to be able to learn from the people that I, sat next to.
Yes. Yeah.
So I think for all of you, like, students out there, just try to, of course you can learn from your teacher, but also, be open to learning from the people who you're kind of competing against, if you will, because there's space for everybody to succeed. It's not just one person.
Yes.
Even if it feels that way, obviously in one audition, there's only going to be one person who gets the job, but there are lots of auditions that happen and lots of opportunities for everyone to do well. And I think that's just a more positive attitude to have about it. And
Yeah.
yeah.
I think too, like, if you support people around you, doesn't matter if you win the job or not, you're still going to have to see these people. Like, and I remember some of the people that I would see on the audition circuit have now become really close friends of mine, because we'd see each other and obviously we'd be like really competitive, but we'd also be like, man, I just love this guy. He brings the best out of me. And like, we really are good friends.
Totally.
Yeah.
There are a few people like that for me who I've only ever met at auditions. And still, if I see someone, or if I hear that they're like in the finals for a job, I'll be like, oh, I hope she gets it. I'm like rooting for them. And, that's the kind of atmosphere I think we all hope to cultivate, rather than like this backstabbing or jealous, thing, which can happen quite easily with flutists, as you may be able to imagine.
I mean, yeah, I think it's easy, but we have to, like, focus towards the positive, and it's just a shift.
Yeah, definitely.
One last thing. Talk about just the arts and music in general and why they're so important right now. Like, what have they given you, and what, could you see that they could offer to society?
I keep thinking about, I can't remember the exact quote, but in the back of Kresge at the big hall at Interlaken, there's a quote on the stage, and it's something about like uniting the world through the universal language of the arts or something. That's not exactly verbatim, but it's something about the universal language of the arts. And I feel like that's never been more true than now. I mean, it's something that is uniting the whole world when we're all in the same, in the exact same situation, basically, everyone on the planet. And it's some way for us to all connect, whether it's like listening to a concert or watching a movie or reading a book or reading an article. It's like just a way to connect with other people when we all might feel really isolated. So.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, yeah, just that connection between people, and it's so important. And
it's
I feel
important.
like while we're not able to connect with people face to face, or like kind of like, touch, get hugs or whatever, music is a way to like kind of start where words end, right? It's like music begins where words leave off. And I always like to think that it just like, you can really reach somebody's emotions. Like when you speak with emotions through music, that really communicates to that person, and it hits here, here, the heart, so.
Yes, absolutely.
Hey, thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks, David. This was fun.
Hey, I really missed making music with you on stage, and I really.
Me too.
But yeah, it's really great to have a conversation. Sorry, my FaceTime for my other appointment.
Oh, it's okay. So, okay, I'll let you go. So, bye everybody.
Bye. Bye.